Shalom Talmudim, Ani More Atem Talmudim, Atem Talmudim Tovim. Today we are going to talk about adjectives, and this has been asked a couple times as we've been working, and we've mainly tried to avoid talking about grammatical categories up to this point, but I just want to teach you grammatically what's going on, and I know many of you have not had English grammar even, or can't remember what you had. And some of you likely hail from other parts of the world where they maybe have different ways of talking about things. So that's totally fine. We're just going to talk about what kind of uses of terminology, what kind of titles we use when we're talking about adjectives. And as you can see on the screen, there are three uses of the adjective. So an adjective is a word that describes a noun, basically. And so there are three ways that can function, and this is how we describe it. Attributive, predicative, or as a predicate we could call it, or substantive, or a substantival adjective. Now, a substantival adjective is the easiest to understand because that's when an adjective shows up by itself. So a substantival is when an adjective shows up by itself. In English, we do this on occasion whenever we're responding to a question. We don't do it as much, but a lot of languages do. So for example, the wise builds his house upon the rock, but the foolish rolls down a hill, or something like that, to adapt my own proverb. So basically when you say the wise is an adjective, but it's implied that you're saying the wise one, or the wise man, or the wise woman, or there's an implied subject. Foolish is an adjective, but there's an implied one. So the wise fixes his eyes on Christ, but the fool or the foolish one, does whatever. There's a comparison there. So that's what it means when it's a substantival adjective. So in Hebrew, you could just have tov by itself, and that as a substantive could mean a good man. Implied, we'll do it this way, implied man, because man isn't specified. And then if it shows up in the feminine form, tova, it could mean woman, a good woman implied. Or feminine object if it's referring to something that's feminine, like a city or something like that. So substantival is the easiest one, I think, to think through, because you're like, okay, if an adjective shows up by itself, then it's substantival. In answer to a question, if you're asking like, what kind of man is this, and you just say tov. Well, the implication of that sentence, it's just an adjective, but you're building a sentence around it, is a good man. So that would again be a substantival use of the adjective. All right, so the other two, attributive and predicative. So attributive adjectives, so in general, an adjective again is modifying a noun, saying something. In English, good, bad, red, blue, purple, orange, wrinkly, wrinkled, straight, narrow. Those can be all adjectives. So the easiest way to think about this is an attributive adjective. I want red. Red is so much more pleasing to my desire to inflict pain. Okay, so attributive is a adjective that attributes something. So in English, if we say a red house is big, there's actually two things going on here, but red house is modifying house. It's attributing something to the house. That's how to think about an attributive adjective. In English, attributive adjectives come right before the noun they're modifying. A red clean house is big, whatever. And then this is the rest of the sentence. So the red in this case is the attributive adjective. And in Hebrew, the way that you do an attributive adjective is the adjective follows the noun and it has to match the noun. So what that means is that if you see right here the article on ish and the article on tov, that's essential. So ha'ish hatov is how you mark the predicate adjective. So basically the rule here, the number one rule in adjectives, I'm going to give you gold here. Number one rule is you're looking for the article on adjective. If the article is on the adjective, it pretty much has to be attributive. Because if it's on the adjective, it also has to be on the noun because they're going to agree. But if the article is only on the noun, then you have this second scenario, which is a predicate. A predicate is just a fancy word to say a verbal format. So a predicate would be, for example, the man is good, the woman is good. Those are predicate scenarios. And the way that you do that is you put the article on the noun, but you leave it off the adjective. You can also do it by using a pronoun with the which you're probably familiar with. If you wanted to say hu tov, he is good. He tova, she is good. If you wanted to say ani tov, I am good. Those are all predicate scenarios, predicate uses of the adjective. And so you're looking for the article or the pronoun usually in these scenarios. And so ha'ish tov would be the man is good. You can even invert the order, tova ha'isha, and you can have the woman is good. Oops, I misspelled that, I realized. Nobody look. You have the article being the main giveaway of how it's functioning. But again, if the article is on the adjective, it has to be a attributive. So ha'ish hatov is the good man, but if you have ha'ish tov, this next one here, number 2, that's predicate. So this would be attributive, ha'ish hatov, the good man. So you could say, okay, so listen carefully to this. Ha'ish hatov holek el habayit. Ha'ish hatov holek el habayit. So the good man goes to the house, right? That's how you would construct a sentence around that. A attributive adjective, this thing right here, is not going to be a full sentence on its own. It needs something else. But a predicate adjective can be a full sentence on its own. Ha'ish tov, the man is good. Tova ha'isha, good is the woman. Or in English, we would always say the woman is good. But tova ha'isha would be good is the woman. So that's just a simple introduction. If the adjective is by itself, it's substantival. That means it's functioning. You're assuming that there's a noun that goes with it, whether it be a man, woman, house, whatever. And then the two main uses are going to be attributive and predicative. Attributive, predicate. And you're looking for where the article is. If the article is on the adjective, it has to be attributive. Now, I should say, too, that if there's no article whatsoever, it could be either. So context will tell you. Ish tov could be a good man or a man is good. And context will tell you it's actually not that hard because if you just say ish tov, nothing else, well, then you're pretty much assuming that's got to be a sentence in and of itself. But if you're saying ish tov holek el habayit, then you're saying, well, a good man goes to the house because it's part of a sentence. So context is going to tell you that. But just in general, I know some of you were asking about how adjectives work and how you know what's being said. And so this is how to think through it. So looking at whether it's attributive, predicative, or substantival. So you can rewatch this video a couple times if you want help on that. Last thing I'll just throw out just for consideration is that we will start learning about what's called a directional hey. So sometimes place names will have an extra ah sound at the end, and that's an old way in Hebrew of having a directional a directionality to it. And so, like for example in Jonah, it says that Jonah fled to Tarshish, but instead in Hebrew, Tarshish becomes Tarshisha if you're going to it. Yonah holek Tarshisha. So Jonah is going to Tarshish. So we'll see that it's not super common, but it's not uncommon either. That's the thing. So we'll see that when we're reading in Hebrew, but I just want you to be aware of that because it's similar to adjectives having a special function. So wanted you to be aware of those things. All right, hope you have a good weekend, and we'll see everyone who's important in class on Monday. Tuesday? I meant Tuesday.